So when we talk about design and appeal of the actual mouth, it's these ideas of appeal in drawing, these 2D ideas. So again, we have these concepts of straights versus curves. And the two curve shapes that we generally deal with in animation are S's and C shapes. So if you look at this page of drawings, it's quite a useful image to look at, because it's quite clear to see that these mouth shapes are pretty much defined from either C or S shapes, and there's nothing else in there. So if you look at the lower lip, this is a C, this is a C, this one's an S, this one's an inverted S, also the same thing, also the same thing, two C's, two C's, two kind of obscure C or a little bit of an S there. It's this kind of simplistic shape language, and it's so useful to think of it in this kind of very basic drawn idea, because what can very easily happen in a rig, in a CG rig, is that your mouth shape can start to have too many peaks and troughs and start to get very complicated. You can dial on all these shapes that starts to take the lip lines into these very confusing W shapes or whatever they are. And it's kind of useful to step back, look at the shape as a very graphic idea and think, can I simplify this shape into a C or to an S? And if it doesn't look like that, what can I do to help that process along the way? Because, if you start to have too many complex lines, it's pretty much becoming ugly. It's losing its appeal. There's a reason why these C's and these S's and these straights and these curves are design principles, because they are comfortable and appealing to look at. This last point, favoring, we know favoring as a timing principle, but it's one of these principles that when you're looking at mouth animation becomes quite important, because when you lay down some keys for your mouth, chances are, you'll hit specific keys for shapes, and then by default, you'll let the Maya interpolation do what it needs to do and give you in-betweens. But generally, lips don't move that way. They're not tied to the same kind of Newtonian laws of physics as the rest of our body, in the sense that there's very much an ease and a kind of a samey amount of in-betweens. In the mouth and in the jaw, you tend to favor shapes more than you would in other parts of the body. So you would hover around a particular shape more, and then quickly transition into another shape and hover around that shape. The transitions, unless you were speaking very slowly and without a lot of conviction or for a reason, then the transitions are likely to be quite fast, and as I said, you're sort of hovering around those key points more. The same thing for the jaw. It doesn't tend to move very slowly, but like the eyebrows as well. They're sharp movers. The eyebrows are a great example. The eyebrows tend to, because they're muscles, they fire and they quickly get to where they need to get to, and then they just kind of, they'll hit a point and then they'll just kind of, depending on how realistic you go, they'll hit a point and they'll soften into a point lower. But the jaw is a bit like that as well. If you look at the modulation of the rotation curve of a jaw, it tends to be quite sharp. Obviously, we have to be careful of curves that are too sharp, because we can still start to get into popping land. But there are ways to break that up and to make that look a bit more naturalistic. You would probably have a sharper jaw curve with a slightly less sharp lip curve on top of that. And your curves of your lips and how they move, the ups and the downs, wouldn't necessarily tie into the jaw. They would be approached separately, because if they did, they would look again like this parented relationship.